September 21st, 1975. The San Diego Chargers are taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers on opening day of the season. It's a team projected by many to be one of the worst in football and dead last in the AFC West, taking on the defending Super Bowl champion, and a team that, on paper, might be even stronger than they were the previous year when they won the whole thing. And head coach Tommy Prothro decided to deliver one of the greatest pregame speeches of all time prior to this opening day showdown, when he declared that his team had no chance whatsoever to win the game. He flat out told the Chargers before the game, "The Steelers are more talented than you and will win this thing," and said that on their best day, there was still no way that they could beat the Steelers. And it was not an attempt at reverse psychology, and no one knew what was going on. To Prothro's credit, he was right, as the Steelers ended up winning the game by a final score of 37-0, which set the tone for both teams as their seasons went on. You can learn more about that insane pregame speech by Prothro by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And sure enough, Tommy Prothro was not a good head coach, and the San Diego Chargers were not a good football team. We were 11 weeks into the 1975 season, and the Chargers were looking at historic futility, sitting at 0-11 and on track to be the first team to go an entire season without winning a game since the 1960 Dallas Cowboys, and the first team to lose every single game since the Brooklyn Tigers and Card Pitt both went winless during the 1944 season at the height of World War II. Because yes, there were multiple teams that went 0-10 that season. 11 weeks into 1975, and this team right here, the San Diego Chargers, had no wins at a time when every other team had at least 2. 11 weeks into 1975, and the Chargers had scored just 120 points, averaging under 11 points per game, giving them the worst offense in the AFC by a fairly large margin. 11 weeks into 1975, and the Chargers had a point differential of -142, which was near the bottom of the NFL, which is unsurprising when you've literally been outscored every single week. 11 weeks into 1975, and the Chargers had already been shut out 3 times and had allowed 33 or more points in 4 games, boasting a Swiss cheese defense on the regular. And it's not as if the Chargers could leverage this into the #1 pick in 1976. There was no one to tank for, because with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Seattle Seahawks entering the league as expansion teams, and with one of those teams getting the right to draft first overall, and the other team getting the 2nd pick, this awful season was going to be all for nothing. And then, in the span of 1 weekend, the man in charge of this team of losers became the luckiest man in America. The first 11 weeks of the season, everything went wrong for this man right here, the head coach of this group of players. But during week 12, everything went right. And I'm not just talking about on the field. Believe me, in many ways, this has nothing to do with what happened on the field, although it definitely helped. Because in week 12 of the 1975 season, when the San Diego Chargers played the Kansas City Chiefs, this man right here, head coach Tommy Prothro, went from the man in charge of America's worst team to the luckiest man on the face of the planet. And he saw his luck change overnight. Because this is the story behind the luckiest coach in NFL history. Before I talk about the man who had all the luck, make sure that you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL, and we have a new live stream every day as well. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place for you. And I would really appreciate your support as we try and grow this community of football and sports historians and get closer and closer to 70,000 subscribers. Thanks in advance, and with that in mind, let's talk about the man who hit the jackpot in more ways than one. Before I talk about the game between the Chargers and the Chiefs, and just how lucky Tommy Prothro got, we need some context to understand the importance of the game for the man right here, as well as what the original game plan was. It's December 7th, 1975. It's week 12 of the NFL season, and we've got a battle on our hands in the AFC West between the San Diego Chargers, led by Tommy Prothro, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Of all the games on the schedule with 3 weeks to go, on paper, this one was probably the least significant of the bunch, even with the Chargers playing for a shot to avoid historic futility. Both the Chargers and the Chiefs were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs by this point, with the Chiefs sitting at 5-6 and the Chargers at their paltry 0-11, and with neither team having much of anything to play for except for pride. However, this was a divisional game, so there was a routine involved for the Chargers when flying out to Kansas City, just as they had done every single season for over a decade. The plan was to leave on Saturday out of San Diego and take a direct flight into Kansas City via United Airlines. Seems pretty obvious and self-explanatory, right? Well, not quite. Because on December 6th, one day before the game, there was a massive issue at this place right here prior to the holiday season. Because United Airlines, the nation's largest airline, had gone on strike. I'm not going to go too much into the details of a 16-day strike, but it plays an absolutely critical part in our story. Over 16,000 workers, as part of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, walked out at midnight, with the mechanics and rent workers wanting higher pay. Mechanics earn less than $8 an hour, while rent workers earn just $6.40 an hour. And obviously, seeing as you kind of need rent workers and mechanics in order to run an airline, all flights were grounded. It was too unsafe to fly, so United Airlines was halted. The Chargers would have to find some other way to get into Kansas City to play the game, because their original plans to take a direct flight were canceled. Now, instead of flying comfortably into Kansas City via United, the Chargers would need to get a different flight from a different airline and have it involve a layover somewhere, since there aren't exactly too many flights from San Diego to Kansas City direct. At 3 a.m. that Saturday, this man right here, Tommy Prothro, was woken up by the business manager of the Chargers, Bobby Hood, who informed Prothro of the news that United Airlines had gone on strike, and the only way to make it to Kansas City was to take a connecting flight leaving at 6 a.m. So Prothro, who probably wasn't already feeling the best as the head coach of a team that had just lost 11 straight games, rolled out of bed to meet the team at the airport before the sun even rose, way earlier than planned. This was a TWA flight, and since there was nothing direct from San Diego to Kansas City, the team would have to make a layover in Las Vegas. And at this point, you might be able to tell where the story is going to go, because as Prothro was about to find out, the United Airlines strike might have saved his career and made him the luckiest man in America. The TWA flight landed safely in Vegas, and Prothro, realizing that he had so much time to kill before the second flight to Kansas City, said, "Screw this. I'm not staying around at the airport." Remember, this was 1975. It was an entirely different world. The idea of leaving the airport and coming back seems way too risky and almost unfathomable now. But in 1975, I guess you didn't have to think twice about it. So when Prothro landed in Vegas, he got a cab and decided to go to the Strip to play some hands of poker at the Tropicana Hotel. If you've never been to Vegas, the airport might be 5 minutes away from the Strip. So it's very much like Phoenix, where the airport is as close to downtown as you're going to get. The hands of poker that Prothro played? Super successful, as by the time he got back to the airport in time for his flight, he won $200. For some perspective today, that comes out to roughly $1,200. Considering the fact that he was never supposed to be in Vegas in the first place and wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for United Airlines strike, not too shabby. And then, Prothro decided to try his luck some more. He had a hot hand, so why the heck not? When he got to the airport, he put a quarter in the slot machine. Because yes, if you've ever been to the airport in Las Vegas, they do have slot machines inside the terminals. A quarter is basically loose change, and Prothro just won $200, so just throw a quarter in there for good measure and see what the heck happens. Sure enough, Tommy Prothro won the jackpot. We don't know how much he won in that machine, seeing as the exact amount was never reported on, and Prothro passed away 30 years ago. But I'm going to assume, seeing as it was a jackpot, that it was a fairly substantial amount. At the very least, he made his quarterback that he put in. At 2:55 a.m. that morning, Prothro was asleep, thinking that he was going to have a direct flight to Kansas City with his team. A couple hours later, he found himself in Las Vegas over $200 richer, plus whatever he won on the jackpot, which may have been thousands upon thousands of dollars. Not a bad way to make use of the United Airlines strike, if I do say so myself. So at this point, Prothro was feeling himself, having not just beaten the house, but having beaten the slots at the airport. And if the Chiefs knew that going into this game right here, and knew that Tommy Prothro was on a hot streak with his luck, I'm not even sure they would have showed up. Honestly, with how hot Prothro was and how lucky he was, you could have had the Chargers take on the 1972 Miami Dolphins or the Vince Lombardi-era Green Bay Packers of the 1960s, and I would still take the Chargers to win, because when it's your time, it's your time. And sure enough, when the Chargers landed in Kansas City following that unscheduled but very fortunate layover in Las Vegas, the Chargers finally did it. For the first time all season, they had won a game. They had gone on the road to Arrowhead Stadium and defeated the Kansas City Chiefs, as the losing streak was over. The Chargers finally had something in the win column that wasn't a goose egg, as the Chargers ended up winning this game by a final score of 28-20. Winning it by 2 possessions, since back in 1975, there was no 2-point conversion in the NFL. The Chargers defense, which was much maligned all season, completely stopped Kansas City in its tracks on the ground, forcing 6 fumbles while recovering 3 of them, and holding the Chiefs to just 63 rushing yards on 30 carries, coming out to an abysmal 2.1 yards per carry. San Diego had just 123 yards of total offense the previous week against the Denver Broncos, and had the second fewest yards of any team in football throughout the 1975 season. But on this day against the Chiefs, it was a complete reversal of fortune. San Diego had 412 yards of offense, outgaining the Chiefs 412 to 232, nearly doubling their total yardage thanks to 247 yards on the ground on 5 yards per carry, and thanks in part to a great game in the backfield from Ricky Young, who had 125 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Chargers, including the go-ahead touchdown in the 4th. This was the best game of Ricky Young's entire NFL career, and not a bad time to have it, if I do say so myself, especially seeing as he played this game with a sprained ankle and bruised ribs. If the Chargers threw for 0 passing yards on this day, they still would have finished the game with more total yardage than the Chiefs. All of this led to the Chargers finally getting a win, meaning that in roughly a 24-hour stretch, Tommy Prothro won at Tropicana in poker, won the jackpot on an airport slot machine, and won a football game. He completed the trifecta. Said Prothro on the reversal of fortune for he and the team, "I knew things were changing when I beat a slot machine for the first time when our plane stopped in Las Vegas on the way to Kansas City." Tommy Prothro was not a good head coach at the NFL level. He coached 7 seasons in the league across the Los Angeles Rams and the San Diego Chargers, and went just 35-51-2, winning only 40% of his games while having 1 season with a winning record and never making it to the playoffs. He was a heck of a coach in college, but in the NFL, not so much, especially seeing as I don't think it's a coincidence that literally the moment Prothro was replaced by both the Rams and the Chargers, both teams went from laughingstocks to contenders on a yearly basis overnight. Having said that, sometimes when you're feeling lucky, you're invincible and on top of the world. And to say that Tommy Prothro was feeling that here would be putting it lightly. It's one thing to win a football game. It's another thing to win a ton of hands at the poker table. It's another thing to win a slot machine. It's something else entirely to do all 3 of those things during the same weekend. 'Tis better to be lucky than good, and Tommy Prothro definitely felt that here during this weekend and this game against the Chiefs. Because even though Prothro and the Chargers had some really crappy luck throughout the majority of the 1975 season, when December rolled around, in more ways than one, Tommy Prothro hit the jackpot. Be sure to like and subscribe if you have not done so already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other channels, JG8 for the history of college football, JG7 for the history of baseball, and JG9 News, where we talk about all things happening in the NFL. Join me every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we'll play live NFL trivia for cash prizes. And make sure to join me live, as we're on stream just about every single day. And thanks to all our Patreon members and our YouTube members for helping out the channel. See how you become a member and show your support financially in the description down below.